But just like any great speaker in this area, the content that he's about to present is going to speak for itself. I'm really excited to see this. I'm always really excited to see one of Dave's talks, so let's give him a great big hand.
Thank you very much, and I want to give a big round of applause for everybody that came out here for SegKC. It's amazing that you have such an awesome crowd here. We don't get something like this in Cleveland, so it's really cool to see. So a round of applause for yourself. So this talk today, it'll be a little bit about SET, but more so kind of how the industry's at and how you can leverage things like SET or other attacks to get into organizations. And what's interesting is when I started doing the social engineer toolkit, one of my good friends, Chris Nagy, who started socialengineer.org, him and I were talking in an IRC chat room, and I was really big into the offset guys, the guys that created Backtrack, and I think before that was WAPix and IWAX. And we're all sitting there like, hey, we should start doing like social engineering as part of pen test. I think that'd be cool. And Chris is like, yeah, I think that'd be awesome. We should start a whole like framework around social engineering because we think it's going to be like the next big thing in this industry. And I'm like, hey, I kind of know how to program a little bit. I should write this tool called SET. And Chris is like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So the first iteration of SET was literally like a mass mailer that would send emails out, and you click a link and it'd do some like Adobe Jack stuff that would compromise your machine, which I think still works today. But anyways. But that's kind of how SET was started, and today it's kind of come full turn to where it's an exploitation framework that can really help you in social engineering. So I'll talk a little about that, and especially what the new version of SET is out. So the new version was an interesting story. I actually stopped working on SET for about 4 months or so while I worked on a few other tools, and I decided to take the daunting task of converting from Python 2 to Python 3 and keep it backwards compatible, which is the most miserable experience that I've ever had in my entire life. If anybody's ever gone from 2 to 3, it's the most miserable thing. Like literally, my wife Erin would be like, hey, you want to come into bed? I'm like, no, I'm converting from Python 2 to Python 3, I can't talk right now. She's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, go upstairs. So it's the worst thing ever. I don't recommend going from Python 2 to Python 3. Just a brief introduction myself. I kind of started off coding MUDs. It's kind of where I started doing a lot of my basics, I guess, to security. There was an Emlyn/DQ hybrid where you dial into a BBS, and some of you are probably too young to know what any of that stuff is, which is really weird for me to talk about that. But you dial into a BBS, and you'd have these massive, online MMORPGs that had no graphics. So like you'd actually like kill somebody, you have to like type kill somebody, or like kick somebody, you have to like type kick something. And so I got really fast at typing that way. And then I ended up taking over a MUD, and I started doing the programming for it. And so like the first time I think I started taking over the programming, I crashed the whole MUD for like 6 days, and I didn't know how to fix it. And it was just like one of the most terrible experiences I've ever had. But then I ended up joining the military. And so I started working for the intelligence side, doing signals intelligence and crypto breaking and all that other stuff. And they're like, oh, hey, you kind of know how to code. I'm like, well, not really. I broke my MUD for like 6 days, and that's like the only experience that I really had. They're like, oh, hey, well, we're starting this new like cyber thing where you can like hack into countries and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'd like to figure that out. So I ended up doing a little bit of that, and spent 2 years in Iraq. So when you saw the shock and awe happening on TV, I was already into Iraq and all those other good things, and cracking cryptography and all that other stuff. And so I spent about 2.5 years there, and then I got out and I did a lot of other things. And so testified in front of Congress. I wrote the social engineer toolkit, wrote the book with a couple other folks from the offensive security team, Metasploit the penetration tester's guide. And what's funny about going on TV is I have no idea what I'm talking about, which is where everybody on TV is at, by the way, just so you know. I mean, so when you go on TV, they're like, hey, we want you to talk about this subject. And so you're like Googling, like, shit, what am I talking about? So like, oh, the NSA is doing this. Okay, well, Google this and form an opinion. And you're like, okay, well, now I got to be on in 5 minutes. Okay, well, there's some new breaking news. I'm like, oh, shit, I don't know what that is, so I got to figure that out. Well, the best story I have, and I'm not going to name the news agency, but some of them are funny because, you get on like a certain news station, like, hey, how are you going to explain to us how Hillary and Obama are the devil? And I'm like, well, I'm talking about computer security. I don't really know how to do that. And they're like, but figure out how to turn that into like why Hillary's email servers, why she should go to prison for that. I'm like, I don't know if she should go to prison or not. Just like, I wouldn't expose an email server on the internet with top secret data. That seems pretty fucked up, So, you get different things with different news organizations. But the best one I've ever done And when you go in the news organizations, you know, like I feel pretty comfortable now going on them. Like when I go on, I'm like, whatever, like literally I have like a little room that they keep there for me, and I have like a suit and tie, and I have no pants. Like I'm like shorts, sometimes underwear, they don't care. And it's like, you know, whatever. So when you see me on TV, I'm never ever wearing a suit and tie. I have nothing on underneath. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's Thursday, right?
It's Thursdays. But the best one is, so I get comfortable going on TV, and I'm on a major news organization, it's prime time and all this other stuff, right? And I'm supposed to be talking about, I don't even remember what the topic was. It was like some new crazy hack that compromised an organization, and all these, it was OPM. So it was for the OPM hack, right? And so all these, you know, military personnel, I was infected by it and all this other good stuff. And so I get on the news organization, and I'm not gonna say which one it was.
Go Trump!
But I'm sitting there and I'm perfectly comfortable, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And they're like, all right, we're gonna bring in David Kennedy. He's an Iranian nuclear expert. So David, I'd like to. Listen. If I had one in the chamber, it was gone, okay? I mean, I've never shit myself like I have been in my entire life, right? You're on national news, and you have a split second to figure out what you're gonna do. You're like, either I'm gonna bullshit my way out of this somehow, and I'm gonna be an Iranian nuclear expert, or you need to tell them, listen, you got the wrong fucking person. I'm not an Iranian nuclear expert, okay? And so I sat there and I'm like, all right, what do I do? And like, literally, your body is the most amazing thing that has ever been developed, because you start sweating in places that you've never sweat before in your entire life. I mean, I'm sweating on my ears. I'm like, I didn't know. I'm like, it's like water coming out of here. And, you know. So anyways, I get on there and they're like, oh, so David, you know, tell us what you think about the Iranian nuclear policy and what they're doing and blah, 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 blah. I have no idea of anything. So it's interesting, I'm on the news. I never watch the news. I don't know what's going on in Iran. I don't know who's running for president. I gave up politics completely after that shit show with Congress. So I gave up completely with all politics, right? And so I'm like, and so then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try to bullshit my way out of this, okay? I'm like, well, you know, the Iranian stuff is pretty interesting, but you know what they're doing with the cyber stuff is crazy, right? The cyber stuff. And she's like, yeah, the cyber stuff's pretty cool, but let's talk about the Iranian like treaty policy of 1932, you know, subsection A. I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like, all right, well listen, I know nothing about this, and I'm just gonna talk about the cyber stuff. I'm like, okay, this is David Kennedy, Iranian nuclear expert. We're gonna go back to you, Jim. I'm like, all right. Thank God that clip is nowhere to be found. I made sure I didn't tweet it. No one knew I was on TV. Luckily, no one watches this station apparently because no one saw me. So, needless to say, be careful what you do on certain news organizations. But I will admit, a lot of them are fun. You know, some of the ones that get some of the bad raps, like MSNBC for being like super liberal. They're one of the ones that never try to tell or change what I'm saying in any way, shape, or form. They're like, hey, say what you're going to say, and that's what it is, and what your opinion is. Same thing for Fox and CNN. They're all pretty much the same thing. So, you know, I've had an interesting history, and I currently run two companies. Trusted Sec and Binary Defense are the two companies. One's a consulting company, and one's like an MSSP or whatever, but I don't, whatever. So, on the talk, so what's interesting about the social engineering aspect is that, you know, if you look at kind of the old traditional ways of hacking versus the new traditional ways of hacking, right? You look at before and it's always like, you know, your perimeter is the most likelihood way of compromising a system or getting access into a computer system. And so we look for things like SQL injection and blah, 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 blah. And those are still definitely out there. There's no question about it. But really, you know, what was interesting is that, you know, you have these different phases of the security industry. So you had, okay, we have to secure a perimeter, we have to secure this, we have to do this, we have to lock our ports down, all this other stuff. Hey, we have no idea where our data's at, so we have to put in DLP, right? And we have to do this, we have to move to the cloud, we have to do this. So there's new phases of everything that happens in our environments. And the DLP one was really interesting with me because it was like one of these things where you get to spend millions and millions of dollars of trying to get like this software and this hardware and everything else in. And no one knew what the heck, no one knows where any of this data is at. So you're like, hey, we're gonna try to put some you know, restrictions around unstructured data. And so really all that ended up becoming was regexes for social security numbers and credit cards, right? Because we had no idea where the hell anything was at. And so we invested all this money into all this stuff, and now we have all this, you know, people here and all this stuff here, and then like, oh hey, well our end users now are the problem, and so, you know, we need to start to protect these pieces. And so I'll talk a little about that and some of the protection mechanisms. And what's interesting is that when I'm running SET, and I'm going into an organization, and SET's just a tool. I mean, you can use it for whatever you want to. If you do your homework, most of the time, I don't notice anything as far as protection mechanisms that the company has implemented. Like they might have application whitelisting, like, hey, did bit 9 stop you? I'm like, oh, you guys have bit 9? Oh, yeah, it was really, really hard to get around, right? Oops. You know, or you have some sort of sandbox technology. Yeah, it was really difficult to get around. Most of this stuff doesn't stop the types of attacks that SET is designed to attack with, and it's really interesting to see it. What I love about the hacking stuff is that it's all over the place. Now you have, anybody see Mr. Robot? Yeah. I think it's a pretty good show. And why I really like it is in episode 5 they use the social engineer toolkit to break into Steel Mountain, which was really cool. But you see the popularity happening everywhere and targeting the end users, and it's one of those things that's more of a global problem. And so when I talk about social engineering, I want to explain something is that the tool that I'm going to show you is just a tool. You can use the tool to do whatever you want to. I mean, I use it for breaking into systems that are on the outside via PowerShell injection. But if you do your homework on a specific organization and you actually go and attack them, there's a lot of ways of compromising an organization that don't necessarily get picked up by traditional things out there. And the thing that just gets me is that today, for me, it's never been easier to hack into a company. Today. If I look at 6 years ago, when I was getting into zero-day research and trying to create overflows and ROP gadgets and all this other stuff and memory corruption flaws, that took a lot of time. I mean, it would take me a month to write a zero-day. And where it takes me a day of research to go after a company and then an actual day to compromise them. If I'm spending my time and doing my homework and everything else, if I really am in a crunch, maybe 4 or 5 hours or something like that, I can get into a company. But it's never been easier than it has been today, than it has been any other time that I've ever done. And it's not a negative against the security industry. I think we're doing a much better job. It's just the end users are really fucked up. And it's not because they're stupid, it's just how we design technology. Like Java, hey, I'm gonna pop up an applet that says, hey, it's made by Microsoft, should I run this? Of course they're gonna fucking run it. It's how it's designed to work. So we have a user interface issue on a lot of the things that we do. And what really drives me up the wall about the security industry today is that there's a focus now on technology over talent. And to me, people are really what's going to change this industry, not the technology. You can have a piece of technology that does X, Y, and Z, but to be honest with you, for me to get around X, Y, and Z, usually it takes me about 5 minutes. Whereas an engineer that's actually sitting there looking at what's actually happening, people that are actually dedicated to doing things, those are the ones that usually spot and detect me. So why I have an issue with technology is that in most cases, technology is seen in most organizations as a stopgap because they've done things horribly for the past 10 years. So we've done horrible technology for the past 10 years. We buy this one product, it's going to actually fix our issues that we see today. And that's BS. You have to have a program. You actually have to have a program that you've done from the ground up that actually builds something that works, and then you can put technology on top of that where people are actually staffed to be able to do it. A good example of this is next generation firewalls. Right? So you've had these Cisco Pixes that have been sitting there, and now I have to upgrade those to Palo Altos because they're next generation, right? Because that's what everybody's going to. And so you use the custom importer tool that converts Cisco Pixes and ASA rules to Palo Altos, and so you've had 15 years of horrible egress filtering and ingress filtering and exceptions you've had to do, and you import that in your Palo Altos, and now all of a sudden they're supposed to do magic. That's fantastic, right? No, we're not doing network segmentation, which was told from us from 1987 or 1988. Marcus Rainin with the first firewall is like, hey, the reason why I'm designing this firewall is for network segmentation. No. We're going to build an external perimeter, a DMZ, and then the internal network, right? Because that works. And so you import that in your Palo Altos, and now you have next generation protection. It's the same thing for sandbox technologies. I love sandbox technologies. So these are technologies, and I'm not going to name any vendors or anything like that, but what they do is that, let's just say someone sends an email or you're going to a website or whatnot. And what they do is they take that information, and let's just say it's an executable or a PDF or a document or something that has malicious code in it. It goes into these virtualized environments, and then they sandbox it, and then they look at registry hooks and network communications and things like that for suspicious behavior, right? And if it hits a certain category or rating, it will then say, hey, this is malicious, or you should investigate this and sends it off. Well, what's funny about these technologies is that they're all predictable. They're very, very predictable. And if you're a hacker that knows what you're doing, it's 2 seconds to get around them. Like as an example, if you want to bump your reputation up to a 10, that's awesome. You just code sign it with whatever code signing cert you have. And those are a dime a dozen. They go and buy $200, you can buy a code signing cert for whatever company you want to make up. And so now you have a reputation 10 you get through. My favorite that works for all of them which is friggin' ridiculous, is 2 lines of code. You can compact that to 2 lines of code, it's actually like 3. But what I usually do in all my code is I say, hey, if I'm running in an environment that has less than 2 processing cores, then just exit and don't do anything, right? So you send a malware, an executable that has horrible shit in it, that executes shellcode and does everything, right? It's like, I'm gonna own you and I'm gonna destroy your entire network and I'm gonna delete all the files. But if I'm running in an environment that has less than 2 processors, don't do anything. And that sandbox technology is like, whoop, I'm gonna spin myself up in my one CPU core environment for load, for load efficiency. Spin up, oh, it doesn't do anything, it's good. There you go. All set. You're fine. Woo. All good, no problem. And so the best part about this is that, we really came to the castle mentality, which is, hey, build these walls with archers and knights and all this other stuff to protect everybody from the outside, when you leave the drawbridges wide open. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at today in security. And I'll talk a little bit about that and showing kind of some of the demonstrations, but it works time and time again. The whole new breach that occurred with leaking the FBI and DHS individuals, it was all through social engineering. They called up the help desk, because they have balls, and said, hey, I'm a user, I don't know my token password. Oh, just use ours. All right, now you have all 22,000 FBI employees and however many more DHS employees. Social engineering 101, easy to do. Same thing for was it the director for the CIA or NSA or FBI, or one of the ones, I can't remember the 3-letter acronyms it was. The dude had an AOL account, which it's amazing, right? Welcome. Yeah, welcome. You've got mail. Does it still do that, by the way? They have AOL. I'm glad no one here raised their hand because that would be really weird. We would have some issues, Trent, of course. What was interesting with that is they, the individual called up Verizon, claimed to be a Verizon employee, and requested a specific challenge question to use that to reset someone's password in AOL. I mean, if you have a little bit of balls, just a little bit, you can social engineer, you're good, right? And women are the best when it comes to social engineering. Statistically, women have a much higher probability of social engineering men. It's actually like a proven case study. Like if you're a female and you can call and pick up a phone and you're talking to a male, you probably have a 90% chance of successfully social engineering them and getting their credit card number. So, social engineering is one of those things to me, which is, it's like finding a 0 day every time. I like doing a new pretext or a new attack because it's one of those things that you can literally do that is creating a complete fantasy that no one knows what's going on or anything, but you make it somewhat believable and people do what you want to. And so I'm going to show you a video clip here really fast. And this one, I don't like ever looking at myself or like it's a really weird thing, but so ignore the whole film of where she says like, someone has a higher IQ. I don't have a high IQ. I just, like write horrible code and it works somehow. And so in this case, this is how easy social engineering is. And when I did this, it was for CNN. And Lori Siegel was the news anchor for CNN. And what she said was, hey, I want you to be able to hack into a company. I'm like, well, I can't really hack into a company with you watching me. It's kind of like illegal. I have to get approval from like, my customers or whatnot, or else I'm gonna go to jail. And
take your pants off.
Yeah, that would have been really awkward, especially with my wife. Anyways, so in this case, I got permission from a customer, and as long as we didn't have it had to be pre-recorded. And it couldn't have any of the customers' names in it. So what my pretext was going into it was I was calling the help desk pretending to be a user. And there's certain things that trigger help desk security questions, right? So if I'm asking for resetting a password, I'm going to have some proof of an individual user, right? I need to know something about that person, whether it's a birth date or social security number or something that's going to require me to get that password. That's going to trigger a response. However, if I'm asking just basic troubleshooting questions, in a lot of cases that won't trigger it. Or if they ask for your employee ID or something like that, you go, listen, I don't know what that is right now, I'm just really, I'm really flustered, I can't get this website, can you just check this website real quick to make sure it works? They will go and they will do it. And so in this case, I did a live social engineer for CNN and it worked out really well. So let's see if this works.
When I say the word hack.
You hear that?
In the basement? Well, that's a misconception. What if I told you?
Hang on a second. Let me see where are the speakers?
You think know when I say the word
You hear that?
some creepy dude in a basement? Well, that's
You hear that at all?
misconception.
Yeah.
What if I told you there's a class of hackers who don't just have social skills, they have more social intelligence than anyone you'll ever meet? David Kennedy is one of them. He's what's known as a social engineer, or a people hacker. His craft is to dupe you into doing things and sharing information you probably shouldn't. Some use it for ill.
So it was funny when I did the credit card number one, she's like, well, hey, I want you to hack my boss. And I'm like, okay, well, he's in Europe. I'm like, okay. So I spoof my phone number and pretend to be one of his credit card companies. And so I call up and I'm like, hey, this is so-and-so from this company's crowd credit service department. Hey, we're seeing some weird travels. Are you currently in Europe right now? He's like, yeah, I'm traveling Europe, everything's fine. I'm like, okay, well, did you spend $37.22 on like, sexcardsplus.com or something like that, And he's like, no. I'm like, well, what about this? And I started rambling off some horrible things, right? And he's embarrassed, which is great, because embarrassing puts people in a very defensive mode, okay? And so it makes them vulnerable in a lot of cases. And so one of the cool things that I do as a technique is I can pretty much pull anybody's social security number just right off the bat, just by knowing their first name, last name, and the general location that they're at. So a cool trick, it's like a magic trick that you can do in a lot of demonstrations. But so I'm like, hey, so I just need to confirm a couple pieces of information. Here's your address, here's your last forever social. Is that correct? He's like, yeah, that's correct. Okay, I'm like, all right, I need you to read me the full credit card number and the blah, 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 and this, and this, and this, and the CVE, and all this other good stuff. And he's like, oh, yeah, so it's blah, 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 blah. He spits out his full credit card number to me. I'm like, hey, here you go. Now, I don't know why they didn't play that, because it would have been cool, actually getting his full social security number, but I guess they're a little embarrassed that I was able to get his social security number. But in that case, the guy had no idea I was calling them up, and I had certain things that removed the barriers, right? One, I put him in a vulnerable position for trying to order a bunch of horrible things from the internet, right? I mean, I got into GIMP suits and a bunch of other stuff. I'm like, listen, I understand this is really weird, and I started crackling up on the phone like I was laughing, so it makes me even more vulnerable. And then I started asking for, his credit card number and everything else, and so it removed the barriers, and boom, he was able to give me the information.
Activity. In David's case, companies pay him to find out if employees are leaving the company vulnerable. He and his team show us how it's done. Step 1, spoof his number so it looks like he's calling from inside the company, and then call tech support.
Hello, here. Hello?
Hi, Ken. How may I help you?
I was wondering if we could take a look at a website I'm trying to get to. It's for a customer thing I'm working on for Monday, and I can't seem to get to the website from my computer.
Sure, website, I'll see if I can get to it.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate the help. I mean, that could be a stupid thing. I'm fairly stuck with computers, but so it's www.survey. That's survey-pro.com.
Yeah, I got that.
Here's what the IT guy doesn't realize. By clicking that link, he's just given David full access to his computer.
Well, okay, that's weird. I just hit a new website. This is working fine now. Awesome. I don't know what you did, man, but I really appreciate the help.
Hey, no problem. That's easy.
That's it.
We're on the computer right now.
You were able to take.
So what was cool about that one is, when you're doing these things, you have no idea if it's going to work or not. And I did a little bit of homework, literally 3 minutes just to find the IT help desk number. And I was in DEF CON, so I was hungover. It was a terrible time. I'm like, I really don't want to do this interview. So I'm in my Captain America outfit, right? I think I wore the night before, and it's beer all over and everything. And so I did, about 3 minutes of research to find the IT help desk number. And so I just changed a couple of the digits on it to make it look like I was coming from inside the company using spoof app. And then lo and behold, I called the help desk, and I have access to their computers, and I compromised the help desk person. What was interesting about that one is, what's great about Windows, I love Windows, and I love that we're still on Windows. It's so amazing. It's like candy every time. But a funny story about Windows is that a few years ago, it was 7 years ago, I feel like I'm getting older. But Kevin, one of my good friends is Kevin Mitnick, and Mitnick calls me up, and it's 2 days before New Year's Eve, okay? And he's like, hey Dave, I want you to, and he's like, have you ever ran into a company before that has UAC enabled, user access control? And I'm like, no, it's the Windows Vista days, so UAC was relatively new. And I'm like, no, I haven't run into UAC before, but I'll take a look and see if I can figure something out. And 2 weeks later, I had a 0 day. And so I'm like, oh, hey, here's a 0 day. You can go and use it to get around UAC or whatever. And he's like, oh, that's awesome, that's sweet, blah, blah, blah. So we published the 0-day and we did a talk on it and all that good stuff, right? And it still works today. Windows 10, it still works today. It's perfect, right? It has never been fixed. You want to bypass UAC, it's no problem at all. So in this one, they were running as admin and had UAC, so I got UAC, boom, I was running as an admin, then I moved laterally into the rest of the environment. It was super easy. And they had bit 9, so. Did I say that? Sorry. So, my favorite part about this is phishing, because phishing is, to me, the easiest way to get in. Woo! So, one of the favorite things I like doing is creating a new pretext every time. I started off with messing with people with health benefits, because health benefits are one of those things that is intangible, you have to have in a company. So around Q4, you're like, hey, auto-enrollment, you need to do your health benefits, or else you're not going to get medical benefits for the next year. What do people do? Oh, I need to log into my health benefits, right? Boom, 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 boom. You compromise them and get access. There's a lot of other ways of coaxing people into doing what they want to. Disruptions in packages from United States Postal Service is always a funny one, because everybody uses that as far as malware, and it still works for some reason. It's really weird. My favorite one that I like fucking with people with is I'll send them an annoying email from like a person that they want nothing to do with, and I'll have an unsubscribe link on it. And I'll send like 3 a day, and I'll be persistent as fuck. And I'll send like 3, then I'll go to 4, and I'll go to 5, and the unsubscribe link compromises them. That's the best. Like when their unsubscribe link just owns them. Like, and there's no link in there that's malicious. Like you can click on the link and it's perfectly fine, everything's great. As soon as you hit unsubscribe, you're owned. It's amazing. Those are the best ones to mess with people. But there's a whole bunch of other ones you can do too. And so with phishing, it's all about your pretext of what you do and how you do it. Now I'm going to show you, and a lot of you have probably already seen this before, and I've lost a lot of weight since then, by the way. I'm little Dave, that's big Dave. So I've dropped about 115 pounds or 120 pounds or so since then. Thank you. What was interesting about this, and this is the Katie Couric show, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, and I'll fly through this kind of quick. What was interesting about the Katie Couric show is, I'm literally doing a physical pen test in downtown New York City, and I'm in the HVAC systems, and I'm climbing through the HVAC systems because I found an open vent on the outside, so I'm climbing through trying to get inside this building, and I can't figure out a way to get in. And I get a call from Katie Couric show, and it's a New York number, and I answer because I'm thinking it's the customer saying like, hey, you're busted, you need to get out of there. And I'm like, I'm in the HVAC system. People probably heard me like I was a big dude. My fat ass carting around an HVAC system. It's loud. I was like, boom, 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 boom. And there's a lot of swear words happening there too, because I got a cut. I was like, my hand was bleeding. I'm like trying to wrap it with it was terrible. We got in though. But Katie and her producers called me like, hey, we would like you to do a segment on the Katie Couric show. Is that possible? I'm like, yeah, I'd like to do that. What's up? She's like, I want you to hack into somebody live in the audience. I'm like, well, that's cool, but I kind of need permission or I'm going to jail again. I can't just like hack into somebody and like steal all their shit and then like everything's cool, right? I need permission. And so we got permission to go and do it, and so here's what happened here. And so what's interesting about this one is it took me about 10 minutes of time to hack into this lady's computer. And you'll hear a little bit of the story, but she literally picked like one of the most secure people that I've ever dealt with in my entire life, like better than corporations. She has a computer consultant that comes into her house to like secure her home systems. Anybody know anybody, like even ourselves that are in the security industry, that has a computer consultant that comes in and check our security systems on our systems? No one, right? We're the computer security guys for our family, right? We're like, hey, you just downloaded porn again and you got infected, so I need to fix your computer and get rid of crypto wall. Son of a bitch, right? Like you're that guy for that family, right? I do it all the time. Like my stepfather, I've got on his computer like 6 times. Like, listen, you need to stop browsing what you're browsing. It's terrible. And you get. He's finally got a Mac, which has gotten so much better. Thank God.
I don't know if you can hear this. You can't hear it?
No.
I move it to a different spot, it might work.
I feel like all my antivirus software is up to date. I've taken a lot of precautions. I have a computer consultant who comes into my home to check on these things. And so I really feel strongly that we have done everything possible to try and protect myself and my daughters. And it's something that's really worrisome for me.
Well, that's very impressive because you seem like you're extremely ahead of the curve. So we decided to put David to the test.
Now it's funny when you're a hacker, right? and someone calls you out to say, hey, you have to hack into somebody live in the audience, you know, it's an ego thing at that point, right? Like, you're like, I'm gonna hack her, I'm gonna steal all of her stuff, I'm gonna paste it, right?
Yeah, you are.
Because that's who I am, right? I'm a hacker, right? That's what we do. I'm anonymous, right? So, when I did this, I didn't think about the consequences of what I was doing. I literally invaded this person's life, right? And what's funny is, like, you know, she asked me, like, well, how did you do, Dave? I'm like, yeah, I own shit, right? I own shit hard.
And I like it.
Comfort level with your security is actually warranted. Tell us what.
Oh, what's hell?
Oh.
What did I do?
Comfort level
There.
with your security is actually warranted. Tell us what happened. How did you do when we gave you the challenge of...
Huh?
Get some.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, Stephanie, I would say, was actually one of the top 5% of what I would say is being most secure. You know, everything up to date, really locked down, all of those good things. And so I literally had plugged in, opened my computer up, and less than 10 minutes or so had a fully designed website that looked real in every way and shape or form of a website that you would visit every single day. And I sent an email out, and as soon as I sent the email out, it looks very believable in every way. She clicked the link, and then from there, again, less than 10 minutes of setup time and hacking and all that stuff. I had full access to her computer, her webcam, got around all of her antivirus, everything completely.
Oh, it gets worse.
So, tell us, oh my gosh, that you were able to save.
Well, the first thing we did is we enabled her. So her daughter working on her computer, to Stephanie actually walking through the house itself. We actually enabled the audio as well, so we could actually hear everything that was going on at the same time. So this is the conversation.
I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just gonna leave it there, because I actually feel pretty bad about the whole situation. That was an asshole. Actually, she was super awesome. Like, you know, after the whole thing, she wanted to know how to best secure her environment and things that she can do. And it's one of those things that she was just super cool about the whole situation. But it was a shocking thing, because the whole premise of the Katie Couric show was it was Miss Teen USA, and her computer got hacked. And someone was doing what's called sextortion, basically. So taking pictures of her in the nude and stuff like that, and saying, well, if you don't do certain things, you know, I'm going to release all these photos to the internet. And so she got her mom involved, and the FBI came and they busted the kid. And it turned out it was a kid in her high school class. And so he had Googled how to hack into you know, computer accounts, and so they literally walked him through how to do every single thing that he was doing, and hacked into her account and was, you know, using her webcam to basically do everything. So I was in there showing how easy it was to kind of get into it. And that's the thing. I mean, these types of attacks are very, very easy to do, and a lot of times they don't require you. A lot of times. Test. I got you.
There you go.
Test. Okay. Here we go. A lot of times it doesn't require you. I got a battery. Can I do two? Two? Okay. I was going to do two at the same time.
Not right now.
That didn't sound right. This is going to be
That shit.
Damn it. This isn't recorded, is it, Trent? It's recorded, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
Radio edit.
So anyways, so a lot of these attacks I'm going to show you are things that don't require like an awesome 0 day to accomplish. And when I designed SET, that was the whole purpose. These are structural flaws in how things are built and designed, like the Java applet thing. The Java applet attack has been good for like 10 years. Like straight up like compromise anybody you want to for 10 years. Thank God they just released, was it 2 weeks ago, that the Java plugin is finally burning in hell and they're going away with it. So celebratory, thank you. Yeah. Flash is next. Yeah, so the funny part is, except for it's built into Windows, yeah. It was funny, like Edge is like not better at all. Anyways, so what's interesting about a lot of these flaws is that they're conceptually how things are built inside of the operating system or into certain applications. And so what I'm going to show you here is one of my favorites. So kind of the history behind Java, right? A long time ago, you could do what's called self-signed code signing certificates, right? So self-signed Java applets. And what would happen is that you can name the publisher and the name anything you wanted to. And so what would happen is that you get a pop-up saying this certificate isn't signed, but it's made by Microsoft. Do you want to run this? That's Microsoft. I mean, shit. I mean, I'm sure I need an update somewhere, right? You hit run, and then it compromises your machine, right? And so after like 3 years of me doing talks around how horrible that was, they finally changed it so that you couldn't do self-signed certificates anymore. And you had to go to code signing certs. And so code signing certs were a little bit more difficult because you had to pay $200, but you can literally register any domain name you want to, get a code signing cert, sign it, and then name it whatever you want to. So I own like verified publisher, so it'd say like publisher, verified publisher, or publisher like this shit is legit. Like you can name it whatever you want to. It doesn't make a difference, right? You sign it whatever you want to. And so that was great for like another 5 years. And then recently they're getting rid of Java. Now a lot of companies got smart and they removed the plugin from Java so you couldn't necessarily execute applets. Now the funny part was, I'm like, okay, well I started to panic a little bit, right? Because now I don't have a reliable exploitation method. Well, good news is like the 1990s called and you can still use like all of the old stuff that was built in the 1990s and no one uses anymore, that you can still use today. And so you can use what are called HTA files. And HTA files are phenomenal. Like literally, there's a book from like 1997 that talks about how you can use malicious HTA files to compromise a machine. And that stuff works like 30 times better today.
Is that Secrets of a Super Hacker?
It might, actually I think it was Secrets of a Super Hacker. That's exactly what it was. It's like a rainbow colored book. And it says like Secrets of a Super Hacker. It's like you can use HTA apples to compromise machines and that shit works great today. So, I mean, get that rainbow colored book because it's like elite stuff today. It's amazing. So I'm going to show you a version of SET. This is actually version SET 7.02. And what happens, what happens with versions is I release a major version and then I realize all the bugs that I've introduced and then I go and I fix them all really quick. So this is 7.02, which I released 7 like 4 or 5 days ago and I'm already in 7.0.2. I've already fixed a bunch of stuff. I broke like a whole bunch of stuff. Anyway, I fixed it all. But I did a big conversion from Python 2 to 3, but I also improved a lot of the attack vectors. I'll show you a couple of these, like the harvester attacks, the webjacking attacks, and a few others. But the HTA attack is one of my favorites because it's the new one that I use. You know, what's funny is I remember one of my good friends that works at Trusted Sec, Martin Boss, goes by Pure8, and awesome dude. He was going to a customer, and this customer was like, there's no way that this is going to work. Like, I mean, you have to hit the run button and you have to do a bunch of stuff. There's no way this is going to work. I mean, Martin's like, I don't know. It works all the time for me. And we go and we launch this attack, and we had a 99.9% success rate. Like, 100%, then one person we missed, right? And that one person was on vacation. It was awesome, right? So this works very well, and I use it all the time now. So I'm going to show you how to use it real quick. And by the way, you can get SET. Obviously it's in Kali. There's also a framework that I use called the Pen Testers Framework, PTF. It's a framework for building all of your tools and keeping them up to date. The problem with Kali that you have, and it's not a problem with Kali itself, Kali's awesome, is that typically they're about 3 to 6 months behind on all the tools, unless you're using something like Bleeding Edge, which will update them continuously. So unless you're using Bleeding Edge and Kali, you're usually about 3 to 6 months behind on the tools. So I recommend using something like Bleeding Edge in order to do it, or use something like the Pen Testers Framework that automatically builds your pen testers for you. But I'm going to go and launch the tool. This is the tool, it's free. And so here we go. This is the latest version, and this version was actually a tribute to a good friend of mine, David Jones, Rance, who lost his battle to cancer last month. So he passed away, and so I made this version dedicated to him. It was actually Easter egg codes within all of SET. So if you type in like Rance here, I'll show you some stuff about Rance. There's Easter eggs all over. Like, if you type in Derby, kind of tells you the latest dates and all the other stuff too. So I put Easter eggs all throughout the code. There's some really weird ones like too drunk to code, we'll code later, but somehow it works. Whatever. I won't go back and touch that too. It's like magic voodoo. It's like, I don't know what I was thinking, but it works amazing. And I don't know what that's doing, but it's me. And that's cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the social engineering attacks. There's a lot of different attack vectors that you have within SET. But my favorite one's the web attack vectors. And so you have a few different ones, right? You have spear phishing attacks, website attacks, infection media, PowerShell injections. What's funny is, so there's a big industry now around PowerShell, right? Security, right? So I have the claim to fame of being the first person to ever do a PowerShell offensive security talk. which is the coolest part of it. I did it at DEF CON, I think 12, and it was called PowerShell OMFG. And I released a tool on how to dump the SAM database through PowerShell, and I called it Power Dump. I thought that was pretty good at the time. But we also released a bunch of other stuff too, like how to get around execution restriction policies and stuff like that early on. So kind of spurred a whole industry around security, which is really neat. And there's a lot better people and smart people, like Matthew Graber is like the best PowerShell person ever. There's a whole bunch of PowerShell folks, Carlos, Ben 10, all those guys are just awesome. So we're gonna go to the website attack vectors. And so we have a few different ones here, right? You have the Java applet attack vector, you have Metasploit, credential harvesting, tab nabbing, webjacking, multi-attack, full screen attack, and HTA attacks. I don't ever really use exploits anymore. I just don't do it. There's no reason to, right? So a new exploit comes out, and in most cases, your horrible antivirus that detects like 3 to maybe 5% of the viruses out there usually picks up those signatures for the stuff that's built into Metasploit. So a lot of times those methods, you either have to do some sort of obfuscation or encoding or encrypting in order to get around a lot of those stupid signatures. So a lot of times I don't bother with a lot of the exploits out there. There's no reason to unless you have an ODate. So what I usually like to do is attack things that, again, are more conceptual. So I'm going to go and use the HTA attack method, which is number 8, okay? So we'll go ahead and hit number 8. Now, what set does is it will automatically go and clone a website, rewrite it, put all the bad stuff in there, and then launch the website for you with all the cool shit in it, right? And so what I usually do is I'll profile an organization. Let's just say it's a company, have an external portal. I'll clone that portal, I'll put all the bad stuff in and I'll register a domain name that's very similar in nature to theirs. Maybe a subdomain or something like that that looks very believable. And then I'll go and I'll actually do that. Good websites for this, by the way, are like survey sites. Survey sites are great. You can be like, hey, you know, do you think you're getting paid enough? Come fill out this anonymous survey to see if you can get more money. Cool, I need more money. I want more money, right? Money. Obviously not that obvious, but you know, you go through and like, hey, are you happy with, you know, the quality of the lunches and the you know, people care about the shit apparently, I don't know, whatever. So you do things like that, right? And so people go to the site and they're like, oh, I need to fill out this survey. And what's great is like when you actually integrate with a survey company. So like the first part is like owning them, and the rest of it is actually like a legitimate survey that you don't care about, but it's like a real survey company. And so like, oh, I'm filling out a cool survey, that's great. So I'll go ahead and just clone TrustedSec as an example. Now it's asking for my IP address, and this is going to be the IP address you have exposed to the internet. This could be a host name that you have registered. In this case, I'm just going to do a local host here, which is my local IP address. But if this is exposed to the internet, you just give it your external IP address or host name. We'll do 443. And we're going to use interpreter reverse HTTPS. So we're going to use RFC compliant protocols. Now, interesting enough, what this attack is going to do, and I'm going to explain a little bit about this because it's important to understand. First and foremost, most second stage Metasploit payloads are going to get picked up by next-gen firewalls. It's the only good thing that they actually do. Yeah, it's a true story. But the reverse HTTPS one, what happens is there's what's called a first stage and second stage. The first stage is really hard to detect because literally it's just a call out. Whether it's a socket or an HTTPS request, it's very, very difficult to detect that piece right there, okay? The second stage, on the other hand, is much more easier to detect. And the reason for that is because it's literally downloading all of Metasploit, right? Now, if you didn't know this or not, if you're using the HTTP or HTTPS payload, you're actually downloading a direct binary. Does any web content filtering allow a binary to work? To actually like download from the internet? No, right? So what you can actually do is you can change this around a little bit. And what happens is that back in the day, like there was what we call encoders, right? And one of the encoders was Shikata Guy Nay, which was You'll Never Stop Us. Now that was one of the coolest ones back in like 2005, 2006-ish, because no antivirus picked it up. But then they figured out ways around it. There was specific read-write attributes in the PE file that caused it to be static. And so they wrote signatures and Shikata Guy Nay died. However, what you could do is if you actually set, it's called an advanced variable, you hit set enable stage encoding to true, what it does is it actually mangles that PE file with Shikata Guy Nay. And so when it's downloading that second stage over the wire, it's a random blob, and it's all over HTTPS. So in most cases, you don't detect it. And there's a couple other options that I recommend if you're using HTTPS, like changing the certificate path, the length, a few other things that'll make it much more difficult for the second stage to actually find. But set does that for you automatically. And so that'll set the second stage in a encoded format via Shikata name. Now, the execution path for this, which is why I talked about bit 9, right? Most application whitelisting tools, what they do is they say, okay, well here's allowable executables that we allow for normal operations, right? So if I drop a new binary, and I'll say 90% of most malware infections are still binaries today. You know, they're the horrible VBS downloaders or whatever you end up downloading, and it downloads an executable and then it runs, right? So if you have those types of pieces of malware still in place, that's going to, something like a bit 9 is going to stop 90% of that stuff, which is great. However, there's so many more different methods. Like if I'm going to actually compromise a victim, and let's just say I use an Adobe Flash exploit, I'm not going to find that because it's a trusted process, right? I'm running under the context of that process. Same thing goes for PowerShell. Now this method that we use here is what we call the x86 downgrade attack. And what it does is it actually looks at the operating system we're running in. If we're running in an x86 version, it'll automatically encode the PowerShell commands, inject shellcode directly into memory through PowerShell, and compromise the machine all without touching disk. Very difficult to find, very hard to actually go and execute on unless you're actually looking at PowerShell commands throughout the environment. And so this one right here, excuse me, this one right here will compromise the machine, automatically inject shellcode into the PowerShell process, which is an application whitelisted process, and compromise the machine. Antivirus isn't going to pick up because it's not a file. Heuristics isn't going to pick it up. Most of the stuff won't typically see this. So I'm going to do over here my Windows 10 machine that went to sleep on me. And we're going to use a Windows 10 fully patched machine because again, we're going to be using something that's more conceptually a design thing than anything else. Oh my god, no reboot. Okay, go. I don't want operating system. I'm gonna go ahead and use Edge, because Edge is the most secure operating system or platform ever, right? Now we go here, now I want to show you something interesting. Notice I went to this website. What's gonna happen, if you look up here, is notice I'm at on the very top. I'm at the trustedsec.com website, right? Notice the certificate. It's a VeriSign certificate with, the extra security and everything. And it has this little run button here. Now someone will be like, well, you're not gonna hit run. Put that into your pre-text. You're like, hey, in order for us to verify your computer, you need to hit the run button. But make sure you're actually going to trustedsec.com because that is a legitimate domain name. And so you get something like this. Now you can actually change the publisher name, which is great. But you can go ahead and run this. I'm on trustedsec.com, right? Everything's looking good. Hit run. Everything's fine. Over here, give it a second, get my shell. And you have full access over that computer, which is great. Now, what's great about this one right here specifically, and this is what's been improved in version 7, is that originally what happened is if you went to the malicious website, it wouldn't redirect you to the legitimate trustedsec.com or whatever website you're cloning. The new version, once it detects that the HTA has actually been executed, or at least been loaded into memory, it actually shoots the browser back to the legitimate site, so they never knew that they're at the malicious site in the first place. So they're like, oh, well, hey, I'm at, a bank.com website, I need to hit run in order to verify my computer. You go ahead and run and it compromises your machine, and then now you have access to it and you never touch disk, which is awesome. Hash dump. Power dump. Next one I'm going to show you is one of my other personal favorites. And to be honest with you, I haven't tested this one, so I'm like, great. So we'll see. We're going to go do webjacking. Now, webjacking is one of my favorite ones because the way that webjacking works is that it takes advantage of what we're taught as users. Okay, so for example, in your education awareness program, you say, hey, you need to hover over this link and make sure it's legitimate, right? If you hover over a link and it's a legitimate domain, that's good, right? Yeah, it's good. I'll do like, actually there's a good site, let me see. I like Fitbit. Let's do login Fitbit, there we go, let's do this one. like this one. So we're going to clone this website. Okay. So now we got web jacking enabled. Okay. Now this is actually new. I coded this on the airplane as I was coming here.
What could go wrong?
It's not a joke. Actually, I swear to God, like I still got the code. I still got Atom open on the other side. I was coding some shit as I was going on the airplane. So. But what was nice about the old Java applet, I don't know what I did in my window. Oh God. What do I do? Why is it doing that? They wrote on a plane. Live demo. All right, hang on, I'm gonna kill it real quick and then launch it again. Okay, there we go. Woo! So what would originally happen in the older version of set is that it would say, hey, all of your stuff has been copied to var www or var www.html, and go there and look at the harvester log. The old version of set, what you could do is you could actually see them live as they're coming in. So I re-enabled that, so I basically just wrote a tail routine for set that just tails that log, and then you can see it happening real time inside a set, so you don't have to get on a set or whatever. So that's new. Like literally, I committed it as I was drinking bourbon next door, like 30 minutes ago. So that works now. Or well, it might work. I haven't tested this yet. So again, we'll go back to here real quick. We'll open up Edge. It's so secure. And I need to get my IP address again real quick. All right. So what I usually do in this type of situation, right, is I say, I create a good-looking website saying like, hey, I need to take employee benefits, or I want you to take a survey. But I want you, in the actual website here, I say, listen, I need you to, for security purposes, make sure you hover over the link and verify that it's, survey.trustedsec.com, right? Because that's got to be a legitimate domain, right? Because you own it, right? If it was like, survey.trustedsec.com, you're going to a trustsec domain, you should own that domain, right? It's a legitimate domain. So if I highlight over this, what does that say in the bottom left? You can't read that. It's https://www.fitbit.com/login, right? That's legit, right? Fitbit.com, it's legit. And
Seems legit.
seems legit, I click it, right? You click the link. Notice here, you actually go to the legitimate Fitbit.com site, but then it redirects really quick to a malicious site. You don't even notice it. Enter in your username. Enter my password. Then redirects back to the legitimate Fitbit site. And over here, if I did my coding right, we get our creds.
Yeah.
So the way that attack works is it's called an iframe replacement attack, and it uses a time-based delay using JavaScript. And so what happens is that you click a link and it sets a timer, and it says, okay, in 5 seconds, I want you to open up the Fitbit.com website, but then after that, replace that website with this website. And so since you control the browser in that initial introduction, you have the ability to then compromise that machine. It works out very well. That's just an example of many of the different types of attack vectors that you have inside the set. Now, one last thing I want to show before I get off the stage here, I think I've been on for too long, is that the PowerShell attack vector that I have here is one of the most powerful attack vectors that I see out there today. And the reason for that is because there's nothing out there that I know of that really detects it. Now, there are, in Windows 10, there's actually an API that you can hook into to call all PowerShell commands that are coming in. It's a phenomenal API. I heavily recommend getting introduced in that. So all newer versions of Windows coming out should have that. But things like Emmet, for example, the Enhanced Mitigation Experience Toolkit, doesn't block things like this, right? A lot of the newer protection mechanisms don't block things like this because it is relatively new. Has anybody ever used Metasploit? Woo! Woo! Has anybody ever used the PSExec module? Woo woo, right? Now the PSExec module is interesting because it actually creates a service on the remote machine. right? And that's a big deal because you're actually creating an executable, and that executable is typically picked up by antivirus, especially like the reverse TCP or reverse HTTPS or those are the ones. Now there's actually an advanced variable inside of Metasploit called the exe to custom. So you can set space exe : to exe to custom, and you can specify a path to a binary that is different. However, what you can also do is you can use set, you can use number 6, and let's just say, as an example, you had a whole class C that you wanted to scan, right? PSExec only supports one IP address at a time. You want to do an entire class C. So you do like 10.10.10.124, enter your username, and the password hash, password or password hash, the domain, how many threads you want, the IP address that you want. I'm just going to type into BS again. And what this will do is it will use the PowerShell injection technique, automatically create the code for you, and then use the PSExec commands module and spray shells across the whole network for you. So you can use PSExec without creating a service that gets around AV and you have shells raining, which is really cool, right? However, even better, most people detect PSExec nowadays. That's not supposed to happen. So that's cool and everything, but most people don't pick up on WMI. And WMI is one of those cool protocols that no one really looks for obscurely. And so I released a new tool about 6 months ago or so called Spray WMI, which allows you to do the PowerShell technique all through WMI, which is completely different from the PSExec. You can use password hashes, whatever you want to. And allows you to spray the whole subnet, do whatever you want to through WMI, which is awesome.
I love you.
Love you too.
Make my job hilarious.
So there's a lot of tools that you can use. Another one that I actively do a lot of work on is called Magic Unicorn. And you can actually generate, you can also generate a lot of these attack vectors through Unicorn as well. One of my favorite ones is through Matthew Graeber, which one of the old techniques that I used to use was basically taking a binary, convert it to hexadecimal, and then using the Windows debug conversion method to convert it back to a binary, which is really difficult back in the old school days, like prior 2003. And so there's a new method now which allows you to basically take a binary, convert the whole binary to base 64, and then put begin certificate and then end certificate, and you can call cert util and it converts it to a binary for you. It's the most amazing thing ever. Just like cert utils, space input file -o and then the file name, and it converts it back to a binary for you. It's amazing. Ridiculous. Windows. Woo. But those are a lot of things that you can do. That's all built into Magic Unicorn. But those are a lot of the tools that you can use from a technique perspective. But those are the types of attacks that I find very effective, that I use all the time, that I still don't see a lot of companies really detecting out there that really help you out. I want to thank everybody here from SecKC coming out and hearing me talk. That was really it. Hopefully you learned something new. If you have any questions, I'm always around. And I look forward to bringing some good ones. So thank you very much.